I find that incredibly valuable. Let's go back to the Clark effect from a commercial standpoint. All sellouts.
Hold on, we also had Stephanie White hating on Caitlin Clark's fan base, talking about they're toxic and all this stuff. Whoa, you ain't have to come over here. We didn't ask for your ass to be here. You knew what it was. For one, that's false. You following that Scott Agnes lie, that's false. The fan base is not toxic and all of that. People just hold y'all accountable for y'all's actions, and y'all don't like it. That's the truth. That's the truth.
You guys sold out across the spectrum, record ticket prices. I mean, the growth just kept going. Every time you thought there was a ceiling, you guys just broke right.
Focus on what Lisa Bluder just pointed out. Social media reach television coverage, and a must-watch style of basketball. That combination is what turned Caitlin Clark into a once-in-a-generation star at Iowa. But here is why this interview matters right now. In January 2025, Stephanie White is running a completely different system in Indiana. The Fever went from the top offense in the WNBA after the Olympic break to a fully reworked approach that no longer highlights Clark's strengths. And Bluder, the coach who shaped Clark for 4 years, just explained exactly why her method succeeded. The difference between the two could not be clearer.
Here it says, Lisa Bluder reveals the two biggest challenges of coaching Caitlin Clark. Former Iowa Hawkeyes head coach Lisa Bluder got real about the reality of coaching Caitlin Clark. Here it says, it's wild to remember that less than 2 years ago, Caitlin Clark was still playing college basketball at the University of Iowa. Given all that Clark has already experienced, hold on, let me make sure my mic is right. Okay, we good. Has already experienced and accomplished in the WNBA since that time. Her iconic college career feels like ages ago, although it's impossible not to think back upon these days fondly when number 22 was setting NCAA records and leading the Hawkeyes to 2 consecutive national championship games. And this is what I'm saying. You can't compare what Paige and all these other people doing at UConn. UConn about to win another national championship and Paige ain't there. Just like they won with Maya Moore, just like they won when Maya Moore left, just like they won when Breanna Stewart left, just like they won with Diana Taurasi left. The fact that she got Iowa to back-to-back natties is insane. Like, come on now, let's be serious.
Lisa Bluder coached Caitlin Clark through pandemic isolation, through 2 straight national championship appearances, and through a level of media attention no college player had ever faced. In that clip, she highlighted 2 major challenges. First, helping Clark grow into a leader during COVID when arenas were empty and team bonds were hard to form. Second, handling the non-stop noise and people constantly trying to get close to her during those last 2 seasons. Bluder said she was shocked by how Clark handled it, staying grounded, staying playful, and never turning into a diva. Now compare that to what is happening in Indiana. Stephanie White inherited a team that was regularly scoring over 100 points after the Olympic break. Clark and Kelsey Mitchell were putting on shows every night. Aaliyah Boston was dominating the paint. The offense was rolling and White changed everything immediately. She has publicly said Kelsey Mitchell was the priority, not Clark. She even had Clark playing small forward at one point, taking the ball out of her hands. She brought in Natasha Howard and reportedly told her she could compete for MVP, according to Howard's own comments before the season.
First, during the panoramic, I ain't trying to say certain words, YouTube be tripping. There was nobody in the stands. It was hard to build relationships because of the isolation. To get her to become a good leader, it took time because she was so used to doing everything on her own, but she learned it, and she learned it really well. Second, at the end of her career, there was so much noise and all the people that wanted a piece of her. I'm amazed at how she handled it. She didn't get a big head. She was still a goofy kid instead of becoming a prima donna. And here she said, Bluder has expressed in the past that it took Clark some time to warm up to her Hawkeye teammates as a freshman before blossoming into a great leader. And her stance on Clark being able to block out all the noise that came during her upperclassmen years also makes sense. Several of Clark's teammates with the Indiana Fever have spoken about her goofy side, which Bluder also alluded to. It's awesome to hear that Clark has managed to keep this aspect of her personality.
Bluder reveals something critical in that segment. Clark needed time to become a strong leader because she was used to carrying everything herself. That is the key takeaway. Clark evolved into an elite leader by her junior and senior seasons at Iowa, but it required a coach who understood her growth process and allowed it to happen naturally. Bluder did not force Clark into a fixed system. She built the system around Clark's unique talent. The Iowa offense was simple. Put the ball in Clark's hands, spread the floor, and let her create. That is not lazy coaching, that is smart coaching. When you have a player who can shoot from 35 feet, make no-look passes through traffic and read defenses better than anyone in the country, you do not limit her with rigid sets. You guide her and give her freedom. That same idea is what made the Fever so dangerous late last season. Christie, sides for all her flaws, at least understood one basic truth. Stay out of Caitlin Clark's way. The Fever offense became nearly unstoppable because everything was simplified. Clark had the ball, Mitchell thrived off her, and Boston finished inside. It was not complex, but it was brutally effective.
Pressure she constantly has to deal with. Now, Mama Bluder has been the best. I wish Lisa Bluder was still interested in coaching, because it's clear Stephanie White don't know what the hell she's doing with Caitlin Clark. Stephanie White at one point in time had Caitlin Clark playing small forward. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Put the girl as small forward, taking the ball out her hands. She keeps talking about, oh, this is Kelsey Mitchell's the priority. She was the priority last year. She'll be the priority. This lady don't know what the hell she's doing. I think she was sent over here to sabotage this whole thing. Stephanie White doesn't know what the hell she's doing. You had the #1 offense with the Indiana Fever, especially that post-Olympic break with Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell putting on shows with Aaliyah Boston night in and night out, scoring 100 plus every night. And you come here and change the entire offense. You seem like you're more focused on Ari McDonald, who was at the
This is where it becomes really interesting. Bluder talks about how Clark never became a diva despite the spotlight and pressure. She stayed humble, stayed goofy, and stayed connected to her teammates. That directly clashes with the narrative pushed by some WNBA media voices, and even Stephanie White herself, about Clark's fan base being toxic. White made comments before the season calling the fan base toxic, which is a strange stance for a head coach. You do not take over the most popular player in women's basketball and immediately push away her supporters. Those fans are why the Fever sold out arenas last season. They are why the franchise value exploded. They are why WNBA ratings spiked whenever Clark played. What is really happening is that White is using the same playbook certain local media members use. Blame the fans instead of addressing real criticism. When people say White's system does not maximize Clark's skills, the response is not evidence or results. It is labeling critics as toxic. That is not accountability, that is avoidance.
The best access to Clark during these developmental college years was Lisa Bluder, her Iowa head coach. Bluder retired from coaching after Clark's senior year in 2024, and her longtime assistant Jan Jensen took over the program, and Jan Jensen's doing a hell of a job as well. While Bluder has been seen at Iowa games and is still a part of the Midwest women's basketball scene, she occasionally does color commentary on the Big Ten Network. She has certainly been out of the spotlight more than she was as a head coach, especially during Clark's 4-year tenure in Iowa City. Here she says, Lisa Bluder details the hardest part of coaching Caitlin Clark. At one point in their discussion, Bluder was asked, what was the hardest part about coaching?
Bluder's reminder about Clark leading Iowa to back-to-back national championship games is vital context missing from many WNBA debates. Some try to compare Paige Bueckers at UConn to Clark at Iowa, but the comparison falls apart. UConn has won championships with different stars across decades. They won with Diana Taurasi. They won with Maya Moore. They won with Breanna Stewart. That program wins regardless of who is on the roster. Iowa had never reached a national championship game before Clark, not once in its history, and Clark took them there twice in a row. She put Iowa women's basketball on the national map. That is not a system lifting a player. That is a player lifting a program. Bluder recognized that and never tried to squeeze Clark into Iowa's past identity. She allowed Clark to create a new one. That is the philosophy Stephanie White seems to misunderstand. White keeps talking about her system-defined roles and making sure veterans like Natasha Howard and Kelsey Mitchell get touches, but that thinking is backwards. When you have a generational talent, the system should serve the player, not limit her.
It's not just Clarkonomics. There are other factors that probably help drive that, I would think. Or was it just an individual phenomenon based on a generational player? What are the factors that you think created Clarkonomics?
Well, I do think that she is a generational player and people were attracted to that. I think that, she played with a passion and a joy and a just lack of fear of failure that people were attracted to. They kind of wanted to be like Caitlin in that aspect. And so I think, she was the right player, but I also, here we just tore down social media. I do think social media had a huge role in promoting her. And we have a great social media team at the University of Iowa. They do an unbelievable job. And I think that helped generate the excitement about her. Also, television exposure. The more people got to see us play, the more they fell in love with her. They fell in love with the style of play of our team and of other women on our team. I mean, Kate Martin's having a fabulous year right now for the Aces. Started for the Aces.
And this is it definitely that style of play was must see. And
listen to how Bluder describes the style that drew fans in. She talks about Clark playing with passion, joy, and no fear of failure. That energy attracted people. They wanted to play like Caitlin in that sense. Then Bluder mentions Kate Martin having a great season starting for the Aces. That is another Iowa player thriving at the WNBA level. The common link is freedom. Bluder gave her players room to enjoy the game, take chances, and express themselves. That is why Iowa games were must-see TV. It was not only Clark's brilliance. It was how the whole team played. Fast, loose, and confident. Now look at Indiana under Stephanie White. The pace is slower. Ball movement is more structured but less creative. Clark is used more off the ball, which makes no sense given her elite handling and playmaking. The offense looks stiff instead of natural, and most importantly, it is less effective. The Fever's offensive rating dropped after White took over. That is a fact, not an opinion. They went from elite to middle of the pack. White's response has been to stick with her system rather than adjust to her players. Here is why Bluder's comments matter so much right now. She is no longer coaching, so she has no agenda. She is not protecting a job or a reputation. She is simply explaining what worked with Caitlin Clark, and her insights directly oppose what White is doing in Indiana. Bluder outlines the two biggest challenges she faced. First, developing Clark's leadership during the isolation of the pandemic, which required patience, trust, and understanding. She did not force leadership, she allowed it to develop. By Clark's junior and senior years, she was leading Iowa to historic success, while handling unprecedented attention. Second, managing the noise during Clark's final seasons. Bluder said she was amazed Clark never developed an ego. That matters because it speaks to Clark's character. Despite becoming the biggest star in college basketball history, breaking Pete Maravich's record, and leading Iowa to back-to-back title games, she stayed team first. Now consider Stephanie White's situation. She has a player who has already proven she can handle pressure. A player who has already become an elite leader. A player who won Rookie of the Year, and led the Fever to the playoffs for the first time in years. And instead of building on that, White is trying to rebuild everything. White brought in Natasha Howard and reportedly told her she could compete for MVP. Why promise that to a veteran when you already have the league's most popular player and a real MVP candidate on the roster? That creates tension and mixed priorities. White also said publicly that Kelsey Mitchell was the priority last year and remains the priority now. That is odd when Mitchell herself has said her chemistry with Clark drove the Fever's success. Mitchell does not need to be the priority to shine. She was at her best playing off Clark. They fit perfectly, but White seems set on creating a hierarchy that is unnecessary. Basketball is about putting players in spots that match their strengths. Clark needs the ball. Mitchell thrives attacking off catches. Boston dominates inside. The system should elevate all three, not force them into tight roles. The comparison to Christie sides is useful. Sides had many flaws. Questionable timeouts, uneven defense, confusing rotations. But she understood one thing. Let Caitlin Clark be Caitlin Clark. Do not overthink it. Give her the ball, and let her make decisions. That is why the Fever offense exploded after the Olympic break. Everything was simplified. Clark brought it up, spacing was set, and Clark chose whether to shoot, drive, or pass. Mitchell spaced or cut. Boston screened and rolled. Basic basketball but effective with elite talent. Stephanie White looked at that and decided it needed a full overhaul. More sets, more structure, more defined roles. On paper that sounds smart. In reality it slows down Clark's greatest weapon, her creativity in space and transition. Lisa Bluder would never make that mistake. She knew you build around a player like Clark. You do not force her into your preferred system. The system serves the player. Bluder also understood the value of joy and freedom. She talks about Clark playing without fear of failure. That is what made Iowa so fun to watch. Clark took deep shots early through creative passes and played with confidence because she was allowed to. That freedom is missing in Indiana now. The offense looks tight. Clark plays more cautiously and mechanically. She still produces because she is elite, but the joy and spontaneity are not as visible as before. At the highest level, talent alone is not enough. Players must feel trusted. They must feel empowered to take risks. When a system fights a player's instincts, that player becomes less effective even if their skill never changes. That is what is happening in Indiana. White's system works against Clark's instincts instead of enhancing them, and the results show it. The offense is less efficient, less dynamic, and less exciting than it was late last season. The irony is that Stephanie White is known as an offensive-minded coach. She is supposed to be a system builder, but complexity does not equal success. Often the best answer is the simplest one. Give the ball to your best player and let her create. Lisa Bluder understood that at Iowa. Christie Sides eventually understood it with the Fever. Stephanie White still has not. And it is costing the team momentum heading into the new season. So the real question is, will White adjust, or will she keep forcing her system regardless of the outcome? Because if she keeps trying to fit Caitlin Clark into a fixed role, instead of building around her strengths, the Fever risk wasting a year of her prime. In a league with short championship windows, that is unacceptable. Bluder's comments should be required viewing for White. They are a blueprint for coaching a generational talent. Trust them, empower them, give structure with freedom, and build around what they do best. Do not overcomplicate it. Iowa proved it for 4 years. The Fever proved it late last season. Give Clark the ball, spread the floor, and let her create. Everything else is just noise. What do you think? Is Stephanie White the right coach for Caitlin Clark, or should the Fever have stuck with what already worked? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more WNBA analysis that focuses on what actually matters: winning.